continuing to celebrate all things Sydney 2000, the 25th anniversary, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by our next guest. He was part of Australia's history-making team in Sydney 2000. To this day, still our most successful Olympic team in terms of medals won. I know Paris likes to say that they were our most successful team in terms of gold medals won, but Sydney still holds that overall distinction for medals won, and he won a gold medal at those Olympics, working alongside Mark Turnbull in the men's 470 sailing class on a historic day for Australian sailing. It was one of 2 gold medals won on that day, broke a 28-year drought in the sport of sailing for Australia. 4 gold medals won, and since then, let's be honest, the floodgates have opened. Australia has just absolutely dominated Olympic sailing, but it's such an honour to welcome to the show today Tom King. Tom, welcome to Off the Podium.
Well, thank you, Ben. Nice to be invited along.
It's exciting to have you on, mate. I'm thrilled to have you on here and talk about your career because it's been a while since we've had a sailor. We had Gray Morris on just before Paris, but we've had several sailors on over the years, and I always love talking to sailors because you guys carry the Olympic team. Let's be honest. Whenever Australia is having an Olympics that people are thinking is a bad one, who comes to the rescue? The sailors. The sailors are always the reliable team, I feel, particularly this millennium. So I feel that we need to get more of you on the show, and we need to talk about you guys because you guys are the backbone of the Australian Olympic team. Let's be honest.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. It's been a good 20 years for sailing.
Yeah. It's definitely been that way in terms of how it's been. And as I said in the introduction there, I mean, it was 28 years going into Sydney that Australia hadn't even won a gold medal, which I couldn't believe. I thought this was a sport that we always just won gold medals in, but it had been a while before that. But before we sort of get to Sydney and kind of touch on everything that happened in those magical 2 weeks in September, you did go to Atlanta. You were an Olympian before in Sydney in the 470 class, different partner back then. But I believe this was the first time Australia had even had a boat in that class in the Olympics for about 12 years. So, I mean, that in itself must have been a pretty groundbreaking moment. Any memories from Atlanta sort of kind of that helped lead into what you were then going to achieve in Sydney?
Oh, absolutely. And without the experience of Atlanta, I don't think I would have had the same approach to the Sydney Games. And it was critical in getting us to where we were at the right point in time. You're right. The 470 class, Australia had a representative in the 470 men's event since '84, having failed to meet the AOC's qualification criteria to be selected as part of the team. And when I started sailing 470s in 1991, the top Australians were 40th or 50th in the world, and the prospect of even getting to the sort of top 12 qualifying criteria to go to a Games was a long way, from where we were as a country. And so getting to Atlanta was a big deal, just to qualify and be there and become an Olympian and experience that side of the Games. I found that experience of marching into the opening ceremony there, pretty extraordinary experience. And that was probably the point at which I decided that, irrespective of what happened in Atlanta, that going to the Sydney Games was an opportunity I really didn't want to miss. I'd do anything to experience that same environment and emotion and feelings that were in the stadium that night. And then we had a profoundly disappointing Olympic regatta in Atlanta. So we finished 23rd, having sort of qualified around 10th in the world at a couple of major events and led world championships and things like that. And it was a really tough event, and we came out 23rd, which was very disappointing. I guess to put it in context, the reigning world champions at that point finished 24th. So
wow,
we were in good company at that level, but it wasn't what we were hoping for, and it was a very disappointing way to end that. And it took quite a while to sort of digest the disappointment and the embarrassment and the sense of sort of failure. But in the end, there was no hiding from the fact we hadn't done the preparation that we needed to in order to be confident of being up the front. And that was very valuable in terms of how we approached the Sydney Games. And yeah, we went into that next campaign with a very clear idea of what needed to be done and what level we needed to get to by the time the games came around.
We'll touch on that and obviously changing partners and everything in just a moment. Just want to backtrack to two quick things. When you got into sailing and sort of going through the ranks, and you obviously mentioned getting into 470 in the early 90s, I guess was a long-term dream always to get to an Olympics? As a sailor, that was your goal, to try and reach that level?
Yes, yeah, it was. My memories of international multi-sport events and the Olympics were really things like Tracy Wickham at the 82 Commonwealth Games and, John Sieben in the 84 Olympics, the men's team pursuit, in the cycling, those kind of events in the 80s. And that was before I'd even sailed, but seeing that sparked something in me that I always dreamed that one day I'd get to do something like that. And for me, sailing was that opportunity. I got into it in my sort of early teens in Melbourne, and I wasn't great at it. I didn't exhibit huge talent as a youth sailor. I didn't progress really rapidly, but I really loved it and wanted to get really good at it. And with some good sort of coaching support and a good youth program in Victoria at that point, I had that sort of experience of progressing and improving, and I did well in one of the classes that gets sailed by younger sailors, or used to back then. And when I got to the end of that stage of my sailing, the best sailors in Australia, and certainly the sort of best group of sailors in Melbourne, were racing 470s on Port Phillip Bay, and that was the sort of next logical thing to go and become a better sailor. And it was much more back then about this idea of seeing how good I could be and being the best sailor I could. And I think somewhere in my head, I had this crazy idea that I could be better than the people I could see, and that I really wanted to strive to achieve that. And yeah, we one of the first events I ended up doing was the World Championships here in Brisbane in 1991, just after I'd got into the class, and we finished 87th out of 89 in that event. But
not last, at least. Not last.
I got to see these guys who won Olympic medals and who were the best in the world at that point in time, who were a long way in front of where the best Australian sailors were at that point. And yeah, I really wanted to, be that good to see if I could get to that sort of level. And that's what motivated me in the early stages. And at that point, just getting to the Olympics was a fairly unrealistic ambition. But there was a pathway to doing that. And Owen and I, wanted to see how far we could go. And, over the subsequent 5 years, we, progressively went from 87th to 51st to 27th to 12th to, and we worked our way up, and we just sort of scraped into the qualifying, standard for 96.
In that period as well, in 1993, Sydney get the Olympics. The announcement, of course, was made. Do you remember where you were? And you're obviously on this journey right then, focusing on 96, but sort of touching on what you're saying before about after Atlanta, I guess there was something probably in the back of your mind thinking, well, all right, if we do all right in Atlanta, then there's a home Olympics to look forward to by the end of this decade.
Yeah, I absolutely remember where I was and watching that announcement. And I was at university in Melbourne and living in one of the residential colleges there, and we were all sitting around in a room watching that. And yeah, for me, I think I instantly knew that announcement was going to have some effect on my life, like it was going to change the direction of my life in some way. Yeah, that was very exciting. But at that point, we were still quite a long way from even getting to an Olympics in Atlanta, and it wasn't the priority. And it wasn't really until I got to experience the games in Atlanta that the dream of being in Sydney became something obsessive.
What was the decision around switching partners? So you're with Owen in Atlanta. You hook up with Mark, I believe, a year or so after Atlanta. Was it purely strategic? Did Owen move on? Like, kind of what brought about it? And were you familiar with Mark? Was he somebody that you knew of?
So we came up through the junior sailing programs in Victoria at the same time, at the same age. And so I knew Mark, although I'd never sailed with him or against him because we were in different events. I mean, Owen was similar. He'd come up through those same programs, but he was a couple of years older than me, and that was great for me when I was a younger sailor to have his sort of experience and maturity and his skill set on the boat. But in the end, became sort of in my mind an impediment to my development. It's a funny, little boat, the 470, technically quite complicated, and sailing's an inherently sort of complex sport where there's a lot of dimensions to it, and you need to be pretty good at a whole lot of different things, and those tasks get divided in a small boat like a 470. But at the end of the day, I'm the helmsman and the one with the tiller in my hand and needing to be making confident decisions. And I guess I always found it difficult sailing with Owen to play that role, given my respect for him and him being a couple of years older than me. And so when we didn't get the result that we, felt we could have achieved in Atlanta, and I wanted to go on to Sydney, I think he did too, but I felt like I needed to make a hard decision to step out from his shadow and do it with someone else where the dynamic was going to be a bit different.
Mm.
And so I sailed with two great sailors. I don't think of Mark as being a better sailor than Owen or anything like that. It was just around needing a change of dynamic for the next campaign. And Mark was very talented sailor in his own right, the right size, which is very important in the boats that we were sailing. Silly enough to want to sign up to sit in a boat with me for days on end, months on end, years on end to pursue that dream.
Which obviously worked, because we're going to get to obviously what happens in Sydney. But I mean, sort of in the lead up to those games as well, not just outside of the Olympics, world champions in the lead up to the Olympics, gone a long way. Obviously, you said on that journey from where you'd started all those years ago. So I can imagine that going into those Olympics, because I read somewhere that you had deliberately kind of shied away from the spotlight a little bit. Your focus was on the gold. You weren't trying to sort of be a center of attention and kind of get all that, which say some of the other athletes maybe were for Australia in those games. So the confidence levels heading into Sydney, was it, this is achievable, we are gunning for the gold and we're going to be able to get this gold medal?
Yeah, we were world champions. We'd won 3 of the 4 major events in the lead into the games. We were ranked number 1 in the world. I think if you'd asked around our competitors, we would have been the favourites, if not one of 2 favoured teams to win it. And certainly in our mind, we knew that, if we performed well, if we didn't make significant mistakes through the regatta, that we would be in a position to win a medal at the end of it. And if we sailed well, we'd have a very good chance of winning the event.
How much attention was put on the fact that it had been so long since Australia had won a gold medal? I reference, we had Ludi Wiggins on, a while ago, and at that point, Australia hadn't won a diving medal in, I think it was 80 years or something like that at that time. And she said that, we were very aware that Australia hadn't won a diving medal in so long. So when they were able to help break that drought, it was, a big release. Was there a similar thing in the sailing community? Was it aware that it had been nearly 3 decades since Australia had won a gold medal in the Olympics?
I think there was an awareness, but not a. It wasn't a focus.
Right.
So Australians hadn't managed to win a gold the um, at the Olympics over that time frame, but we'd certainly had a lot of sailors who were capable of doing that, who had won world championships, won multiple world championships, had been in games with the expectation they were likely to. We won medals at previous Olympics. Sailing had won a number of medals at previous games. So that concept wasn't foreign. But yeah, it hadn't been done for a while, and hadn't been done in a what you might call an off the beach boat. So the medals that were won back in '72 and in '64 were in small keel boats, not the kind of dinghies that we sail, which is really what Australia always considered itself to be good at, the small dinghies. So there was a bit of irony in the fact that we'd never achieved that. But as you said, we took a very low profile. So there were a number of Australians across all sports who were world champions leading into the Olympics. And you could probably name all of them except us, because they were mostly extremely high profile athletes, expected to win gold. We had that same profile inside our particular sort of discipline in our sport, but we chose quite deliberately not to promote ourselves or our chances. And in fact, we made a decision sort of in the immediate lead up to the games and during the games that we weren't going to talk to the media at all during the games. And that was, with the aim of maximising our chances of winning and not being distracted by that attention, because in our sport, it's a long risk-taking, decision-making game during the Olympics, and any sort of external pressure or expectations can sort of start to influence the way that you respond to that pressure, and often leads to people sailing a lot worse and competing a lot worse in the Olympics than they do in every other event of the calendar. It's sort of quite ironic that in most sports people are there breaking world records because that's the peak event and people have tried to peak for it in sailing.
Yeah.
Because once you get to a certain level, the main skills are around how you execute your tactics and strategy and your decision making. It tends to go the other way, that the standard tends to drop as people start to take more risk to fulfill their dream when they think it's slipping away. And you need to be very careful just to make sure you don't mess it up.
And did you find that Atlanta helped, that you kind of knew with everything that you were just saying there, the added pressure that an Olympics brings, and that could help you during those 2 weeks in Sydney?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's quite a well understood phenomenon in sailing, that a lot of the medalists end up being people who've gone to multiple Olympics. And it's largely because of that, because until you've experienced that environment, which is unique in our sport, we won the world championships in the lead-in to Sydney, and the only person who saw us win it was our coach.
Wow.
There's no crowd there. There's no one cheering. There's no one sending you off the dock. There's no one, it's not like being at the athletics world championship or the swimming world championships. It was the Olympics is a very unusual event where all of a sudden there's this external factor that's not there normally. And having sort of experienced the circus of the games and knowing how hard it was to stay on point for a couple of weeks, that played into how we approach things.
And I could also imagine, though, that you can't prepare for a home Olympics, and ultimately when Australia are doing so well and all the hoopla and everything on those lines, how hard did you find that to kind of keep out of the back of your mind? Because obviously your event is a very long event. It's over multiple days. So how do you sort of keep the distractions limited while all of that noise is going around you that you didn't experience in Atlanta that time?
We had the benefit that we weren't staying in the Olympic Village. So the sailing team stayed at the yacht squadron in Kirribilli in a sub-site that was set up just for the team. And that was a wonderfully quiet, isolated environment to be in during that time. And yeah, I mean, we sort of knew what it was going to be like and just set ourselves up to, stay away from all of the action. I mean, we certainly enjoyed watching a lot of stuff on television, but we weren't running around Sydney going to a whole lot of events and spending energy um, on other things.
Did you do the opening ceremony this time around as well?
Yeah, we did, which was great, and we were very lucky that our event didn't start until whatever it was, day 6 or something like that. Because if it had been sooner than that, we probably wouldn't have, just because it consumes a lot of emotional and physical energy to go and participate in those ceremonies. That was a wonderful experience, and yeah, very glad that we got that opportunity, because not everyone does.
Yeah. 110,000 people, Stadium Australia. I mean, one of the greatest opening ceremonies of all time. And obviously you're experiencing it slightly differently to someone like me watching it on my couch at home. But I mean, can you describe what it is like to walk out in front of 110,000 people and everyone is basically just gone absolutely gaga for every single one of you wearing those beautiful ochre jackets, those mumbo jackets, which are so nice.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And I go back to my experience of it at Atlanta, and I imagine it's similar for a lot of Olympians who've had this dream all their life, and you see it on television, and the dream of being an Olympian. In part of that is this acknowledgement of walking into the stadium at the opening ceremony, and it sort of feels like part of the rite of passage was crossing that threshold from outside the stadium to in the stadium, and just such an amazing experience to sort of to live that. And doing it in Sydney was incredible. Being in the tunnel with the whole Australian team waiting to go out there, and you can like the emotions in that group of people at that point in time. This sense of expectation of what lies ahead in the coming hours and days, is something that I don't think you get anywhere else. It's the most incredible feeling of excitement and anticipation and passion, and yeah, that was great. And then you get to walk out into the stadium, and once again, the 110,000 people stadiums just so different from anything that we'd experience anywhere else. So
bit different than one coach at the World Championships earlier that year. just watching you. Is there given it's such a big team and you're last, is there a hierarchy in the sense that you're the sailing team? I'm sure you hang around with who you can, but is there kind of an order you go in, or is it just it's a free for all? Gazy's at the front, and then
it's a bit of a free for all. That they would usually allow the Olympians who've been to sort of 4, 5, and 6 games to march at the front of the team, but behind that, it quickly deteriorates into a bit of a rabble. I do like the look of the old footage you see of the 1948 and
the marching almost, right?
And everyone marched in line. Yeah. Now everyone's got a smartphone in their hand and trying to film the thing. And I never did that because I don't know. I just wanted to enjoy the moment.
Well, I was going to mention that. I mean, it's almost it's a different era now, because surely a few of you, I'm sure, had a camera, the old film cameras and that. But this is obviously prior to a smartphone. It might have been the last Olympics before a camera phone, because I think camera phones were at least around at some point in Athens. So, yeah. I mean, you're really soaking it in. You're more concerned about experiencing that moment rather than what's going to look good on the gram later on, basically, that night.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just that rawness of it that, we don't sadly get anymore in opening ceremonies and everything along those lines. Is that then, that adds a buzz? As you say, you're competing obviously a few days, you got a couple of days there, do you just go back to Kirribilli that night, have a, wow, that was amazing? Or is it just game face straight back on? The next morning, it's all about getting ready for the the competition? Like, how do you spend those days in between the opening ceremony and day one of your competition?
Oh, we'd have still been training reasonably hard at that point in time. Uh, I can't remember exactly, but I'm sure we rested for a good part of the next day because it's a fairly draining thing to go to one of those ceremonies. You're there hours beforehand being marshaled. You're on your feet for hours and hours. You're not getting back until whatever it is, midnight or later, and it takes a bit of time to recover from that. But yeah, we trained very hard in the lead in, and that's not an easy thing to do with an Olympics because there's so many other things happening that you're getting consumed with, uniforms and village and media and briefings and everything's very hard to maintain a training discipline. But our structure around preparing for events was always to be training up hard up until a couple of days beforehand, but then tapering right off in the last couple of days so that you really had the hunger to want to get back in the boat on day one for the racing. So we'd have been out on the harbour.
Just going out there. Is Sydney Harbour a regular venue? Like, I mean, I think of this majestic harbour that everybody knows, but I mean, for the 470s, was that a venue that you had raced on prior to the Olympics?
So we'd raced on it quite a bit because once the city was announced as the venue, they held test regattas and championships on the harbour and on the Olympic courses. It was an unusual place to have the regatta because it is very affected by land and tidal influence and things that make it a particularly tricky place to sail.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great place to do it because it brought people closer to the sailing and for the most part, the courses were actually pretty good.
It's good to hear because there's sort of always that double-edged sword, isn't it, that from a spectator point of view, you know, places might look amazing and it's a no-brainer to have it there, but from a competitor's point of view, it might be shit. You know, like it's sort of it might look good, but I mean, for us, we're not liking it. So, you know, and obviously that uniqueness then, as you're saying, of the spectators, because it was very well attended. I mean, everyone in Sydney was getting behind all the Olympics, of course, but I mean, still people were lining up the harbour there and really kind of getting behind the sailing, weren't they?
Yeah, and look, we'd never seen that before, so that was amazing.
Yeah,
to have that support.
Now, that starts off fifth in the first race. You win the second race, and then you win race number 8. But when it comes to the last race, you had to finish in the top 5 to secure that gold medal. Before we get to that result and kind of how that all played out, how were you and Mark feeling into that last day? Because, I mean, finishing top 5 sounds pretty simple if you've been doing well enough all throughout the thing. But I guess, do you switch focus to defense, offense, like kind of what changes, or if anything, on that last day?
I'd frame it a little bit different to we had to finish top 5. We didn't even have to start to get a silver medal by that stage. So the way the points were, we'd already secured a top 2 placing.
Right.
And the only way we could be beaten is if the Americans beat us by whatever it was, 3 places, and we finished outside the top 5. So yeah, if we were in the top 5, then no problem. But also if we were close to the Americans, no problem. And so we went in there into that race. I mean, feeling good that we had a medal secured. And it's interesting, we'd had a couple of days to digest that because we were racing every second day, and then the final race even ended up getting pushed out a day because there was no wind on the original scheduled day. So for 3 days, we'd known we were going to be on the podium. And yeah, we went out there feeling pretty confident because it's not an unusual environment. It's not like you just suddenly turn up at the Olympics and you're racing all these people you don't know. We've been racing the same fleet of people for the last 4 years, and we've been competing at the back end of regattas against the American guys consistently over the previous 12 months, and we'd been getting the upper hand of them most of the time. And we knew that if we could get them, so they had to finish in the top 3 or top 2, whatever it was, to win. And so we knew if we could get them back in the fleet early on, that it was done and dusted. So we had an opportunity early in the race to try and get them positioned where we were pretty secure. And so that was sort of strategy number one. And in the end, we sort of did what we wanted to do off the start in terms of influencing where they went, but it turned out that they popped out up the front of the fleet and we were caught in the middle for a while. And then it was just a matter of making sure that we didn't get too far behind, because in the conditions we had, we're pretty confident we'd be able to sail through the fleet, and that's what happened. So we were around the top mark in 10th with the US in first, which didn't look good on paper, but by the bottom mark, I think it was first and fifth, and then a couple of legs later, it was first and third, and then we actually ended up catching them and overtaking them during the race. Which was an amazing feeling, because it happened right in front of Bradley's head and in front of the spectators. And at that point, we had a bit of a reality check, because we didn't actually need to win the race, and we didn't need to be dueling hard or pushing the equipment to a point it might break or anything like that. And so we actually backed off in the last bit of the race, and they ended up winning, and we were second across the line, but it didn't matter.
You had it.
All we had to do.
What's that like? I mean, I always feel this is a tricky question to ask an Olympic gold medalist. What's it like winning an Olympic gold? But I'll phrase it this way, because let's take a swimming race, for example, where, it can come down to milliseconds. You need to finish first to win the gold. You're in this unique position where you and Mark have got a certain amount of time to obviously finish the race, but you can digest it. You know what you're about to do. You've got almost time to realize what's about to happen.
We'd have had a good 15 minutes out there where we knew unless something broke or we ran into something, that we were going to win.
How do you react? Like, what do you do in 15? Like, this is the party tonight, or is it more of a reflection? Like, 15 minutes to kind of digest it. You're about to become an Olympic champion.
There wasn't much talk about it. I mean, you're doing a job. It's not exactly easy. We were working pretty hard. But it was sort of, we didn't need to say anything to each other to know that, we were closing in on the outcome that we wanted. And it was nice to get it done. And the emotion sort of didn't. You're right. It's not an adrenaline pump finish. A huge burst of excitement, because you know that it's come, but you planned everything in your life for 4 years up to that finish line, but not a metre over it. And so, we shook hands in the last 50 metres and and then crossed the line, and it was sort of, we were into a world that we hadn't planned for at that point. And that was exciting, because up to that point, everything was very well controlled and planned for. And it was, it was on the one hand, like, amazingly exciting, but the overwhelming feeling was just extraordinary relief.
And a pretty good day for Australian sailing as well, of course, because earlier that day, Jenny and Belinda got the gold in the women's 470, the first ever women's sailing medalist Australia had ever had at the Olympics. So what was Kirribilli like that night, the sailing headquarters, a couple of frothies going on?
That was a big night. And interestingly, between us and the women's team, Jenny and Belinda, we'd won every regatta on the international circuit that year.
Wow.
But we'd never both won the same event. So when they won about whatever it was, an hour and a half before we raced, the pressure was on us at that point, because we hadn't sort of done the double as a team. But that was great. And we ended up back in Rushcutters Bay, where the sailing base was, and did our unrigging and media and drug tests and all of the stuff you go through. And then all of the sort of sailing community and friends had gathered at the CYC, the Cruising Yacht Club in Rushcutters Bay. And so we went down there and we had an amazing party there. That was just wonderful.
Can imagine.
And then we were, I don't know how to describe it. We were pretty lit up by about by about 10 or 11 that night. And the media people came and said, "Oh, we've got to go out to Homebush now and do Roy and HG." And no one had told us that that was even on the cards. And we had, 11-7 beers and champagnes, and it was all great fun. But we had to get in a car and
Hang out with Fatso, basically.
do Roy and HG.
Wow.
Which was good fun, but we were in no state to sort of keep up with their wit at that point.
Oh, amazing story with that one. It was gold medal number 15 for the games, the penultimate gold that Australia won, the only one that Australia would go on to win at that point. The women's hockey team the next day got gold medal number 6, record-breaking games, as we know. But as every gold medalist gets, Tom, amongst the honours, and I'm going to hold this up for our video viewers, audio viewers, check out our YouTube clip. Here's the stamp. Just got to hold that up there to the camera. Do you get many of these? Like, do you go to Australia Post and buy a bunch, or is that up to the family? And I mean, how long after that are you getting letters in the mail with your own face on it? That must be a weird thing to do.
I haven't had one for a long time. Yeah, no, I mean,
that's still 45 cents back then. I don't think you can even remotely send something for 45 cents anymore, can you?
No, I've still got a few downstairs somewhere.
They're pretty cool though. Like, I mean, it's always this like unique honor I think that Australia has, and I also got a few other ones here. As I said to you off air, I was digging through some boxes, but I'm just moved, and we spoke to Nat Cook last week about it, and she of course won the gold with Kerry. Didn't even make the front page of the daily lift out the Olympian because a certain other Kathy Freeman won a gold medal the same day she did. But you at least made the front page of the Olympian the next day, the daily lift out. There you are, Sale of the Century. Not bad there. Nice little headline next to mark there. Although you do have to go in a little bit into the middle there for the nice spread of your medal wins and everything that was going on there, because that was the same day as Jane Saville, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And like the front page of the papers all had Jane, not the sailing.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that was it
was a big event, but I mean, come on, the double gold on Sydney Harbour should be getting a little bit more than a disqualification, right?
Yeah, look, we, our approach probably played a part in that. We weren't hyped up as big medal chances because we'd chosen not to position ourselves like that. It sort of happened a bit unnoticed, I think, for a lot of the media. I think people weren't expecting all of a sudden 2 gold medals to just bang, pop out of nowhere. But yeah, look, sailing hasn't, or certainly at that point didn't have the profile that it's had in subsequent games. And we didn't do it for the media coverage, so we can't really complain if we didn't get it when it happened.
You did your job. You got a stamp. That's all you needed, right? And here I am 25 years later. Here's a double thread. So we've got Australia Day on Golden Pond. Nice doubles. Back when they're still black and white in the papers too as well. They didn't even bother doing colour. I love these daily lift outs they used to do. And then I've also got here, so, all the little souvenirs I've got. We've got the winners here, Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, cross over to Sydney, and there's a lovely little one on you both there as well. And my favourite, because as I said to Nat last week, I begged and pleaded to get this book for Christmas, the official Sydney 2000 souvenir book, and then this lovely double page of you right there celebrating the gold medal there. Did you get sort of many of these things, or were these kind of things you liked as keepsakes, kind of add to the shelf if the medal's on there, or things like that as well?
No, I mean, I've got copies of those things in a box somewhere, and the book's probably on the bookshelf. But no, I mean, it's the memory of it all, and not just the memory of the games. It's the memory of the sort of whole experience of the journey over 10 years that makes it special, not the bits and pieces you get at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any of that stuff hanging on my walls, or it's not,
The memory's up here, right? That's what you hold close to. What at least the medal though? Surely, is a medal somewhere special?
It's in a drawer. It's in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah. Does it come out? Do you sort of get asked, go speak, or if you sort of do a function or anything like that, that sort of comes out that people can sort of check it out at all?
Oh, I don't get asked very often these days. I'm happy to pull it out. If people want it. It doesn't serve much purpose unless it gets used for that. That was that was always, my attitude that um, the country invests an enormous amount of money in helping people to win medals because there's there is an importance to that at a national level, and in terms of inspiring and encouraging people to do all sorts of different things with their lives. And so I always felt there was a bit of an obligation to take the thing out and make sure that it got passed around and shown to people. And and certainly, it shows the scars of having been passed around and dropped and all
They've
of those
got
things.
to. They've got to look worn, right? That's generally what you want.
But that's, to me, that's what, that's the value of the medal is in that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not something to be sort of, that I need.
Good way of looking at it. But I mean, just on sailing in general, I mean, you said it, I think, perfectly there almost, Tom, that every Olympics it seems to happen, that out of nowhere there will be sailing gold medals. And I mean, London is always the one I use as an example because, like, Australia was at this point, the media was going crazy because swimming had sucked. We'd won one gold medal. Oh, this Olympics is going to be a nightmare. And then out of nowhere, 3 gold medals for sailing. They saved the Olympics, as so many people said. But what has it been about sailing this millennium, do you think, since Sydney? Because, I mean, even in the 470, after your gold medal win, 3 more gold medals came in the men's class. Obviously now it's mixed division, of course, that we saw in Paris. They've combined it. But we're seeing that in so many other disciplines of sailing. It's only Athens since Sydney that we have not won a gold medal in sailing since that breakthrough. Is there just, no pun intended, something in the water in Australian sailing that we're able to keep so consistent in it at the Olympics?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few things. The grassroots of the sport was very strong through the 80s and 90s, and that that provided a good base to the pyramid. There have been a fairly extraordinarily talented group of sailors come through since the Sydney Games. So guys like Tom Slingsby and Nathan Outridge, who've gone on to win Sail GP and the America's Cup and events like that. They are, genuinely some of the best sailors on the planet of their generation. Guys like Glenn Ashby in the same class. We also had a turning point in terms of the coaching and support in the sport. So we were the beneficiaries of Viktor Kovalenko coming out to Australia in 1997. And for your listeners who don't know who Viktor is, Viktor was a Ukrainian who coached the Ukrainian men's gold medalists and women's bronze medalists at the Atlanta Games, and had previously been a Soviet coach who'd coached medalists in 88. And one of his athletes won a medal in 92, I think. And he came out and sort of ran a program in the 470 class that lifted, us from on the fringe of sort of international competitiveness to a squad where we had 3 in the top 10 and often, a couple in the top 5 of international events, and from which, we've delivered a lot of medals. And what happened in the 470 class, 2 gold in Sydney, 2 gold in Beijing, the men's gold in London, silver in Rio, gold in Tokyo. It's just extraordinary. And Victor, in his own right, should quite rightly be considered one of the best coaches Australia's ever had.
Yeah.
And he was, is an extraordinary coach, and that's rubbed off on the system more generally, and the results brought more support and funding into the sport. Peter Condy's leadership between Athens or between Beijing and London sort of helped build out the strength of the support. So there's a lot of things that have come together, but at the heart of it, you had a pretty talented group of people, and I wouldn't put myself in that bucket. I feel like we did it the hard way, but then you've had this, extraordinary group of sailors with some great coaching and support over a couple of decades now.
Which I really think, rather than me sitting here going, ever reliable, let's, forget that the sailors exist, and then all of a sudden they win gold and celebrate them. How about we just stop that? And that going into LA, we put the sailors up there on the same pedestal as we should be with the other athletes when we're talking about the swimmers and the cyclists, these people who we expect to win gold medals. Not to add extra pressure on you guys, but I feel that that attention should be there on this sport, which, if I'm not mistaken, is outside of swimming, our most successful sport this millennium at the Olympic Games in terms of gold medals won. So
look, I don't know I actually don't know whether that's right or not, but it'd be up there alongside rowing and cycling. They're the other two.
I think the difference is rowing and cycling have had definitely, rowing basically had no medals in Paris and cycling went through a very long period without medals. So as well, I feel sailing's a lot more consistent. I don't have the numbers. I should have done that research, Tom, to confirm that, but it's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah. Look, it's been an amazing period for the sport. It's an interesting one. Look, you raise an issue that some of the Olympic sports have where we don't have relays and we can't compete in multiple events. And so even the best sailors, so Matt Belcher in the 470 class, he's won 2 gold medals and a silver across 3 games. He hasn't had the opportunity to do the 50-metre sailing and the 100-metre sailing and the 200-metre sailing and the mixed relay. And if we had that in our sport, he'd have a whole lot more medals. The sailing team would have a whole lot more medals.
Yeah.
We'd have won all the team events in London. And it's not just sailing that suffers that. There's a lot of attention put on swimmers as our greatest Olympians, and I think there's some extraordinary athletes, and I don't want to diminish the value of what they've done, but it does deprecate extraordinary athletes in other sports. And I think of people like Drew Ginn in rowing.
Yeah.
So Drew, he won a gold in '96. He was injured in 2000. Almost certainly would have won gold in the pair with James Tompkins there. He won gold in 2004. He won gold in 2008. He won a silver in London, and so. But
a name very, very few Australians would probably know. Yeah.
He won 3 gold medals and a silver over 4 games over 5 Olympiads.
Yep.
And without a relay and without being able to double up and row 2 events, and I don't think you can apples for apples compare that to a swimmer who's got 3 relay medals and
100%
whatever.
agree.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the reason that you don't hear about the sailing. So Australia will have a chance to win the gold medal for the 5th Olympics in a row in the men's single-handed sailing in the laser class.
That to me is a mate, because everyone goes on about the women's 4x100 freestyle, for example. So we own this event. I'd argue we own the laser ball, right? Come on.
I would doubt very much that the women have won 5 consecutive gold medals in any event, and that won't get any prominence because it's not really well understood. I mean, Matt Wern had the chance to win 3 gold medals in a row in the same Olympic event, and that's
Dawn Fraser territory. That's rarefied air,
yeah.
And it's fascinating you say that, Tom, because I was on the ground in Paris and working with the Australian Olympic team, and it's sort of like we're paying attention to it. Of course we are, but then it's sort of like there's no emphasis even from the team that all of a sudden, like, boom, Matt's going to win this gold medal on this day. Like, it's sort of because it's that build up, right? Because you sort of know, but as you were saying, like, oh, you just got to show up that day and get it. But
it's not a very user friendly experience watching the sailing, and the way that they've done a bit to change the format of the event to make it a little bit more exciting at the end. But the reality is it's played out over a long period of time because there are vagaries in it, and you need to play. You need to have the game played like that to be confident you're going to let the good guys, come to the top by the end of it, and that doesn't help.
I do and as I said at the top, like we've had Matt on the show, we had Will Ryan on the show, we had Tom Slingsby on the show, back in the day as well. We've had some great guests, and I always just love hearing the stories. And Gray Morris was one of our favourite athletes in the lead up to Paris. Obviously got the silver there, so we're very, very happy for him on that one. But it's just sort of like there's just something about sailors, and one thing that I will applaud Sailing Australia for, they've got one of the best social media accounts. If people out there do not follow Sailing Australia on TikTok and Instagram, like they do a very good job with what they've got, and it's very entertaining. So there are people I think out there who clearly are trying to showcase that this is a great sport that we need to, I think, pay more attention to.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, it's a hard one, and it competes against a lot of other sports that we do well in, and that attract the public attention. It's not, yeah. You got to accept that you're part of something much bigger, and to me, before Sydney, if you saw a highlights reel of the Australian Olympic team at a games, you would never see a snippet of sailing. Never. And it's sort of, I think we've come a long way now that those highlights reels will usually have a couple of snippets of a sailor.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
That's
what we want. That's what we like to see.
Look, this, the funny story I tell, like sailing wasn't sailing until 2000. It used to be yachting. And like the sailing team used to joke, we're the 28th sport. We were literally alphabetically the 28th sport. And that's how we always felt like we were treated.
Yeah. I do remember being called yachting. Now you say, I do remember that. Yeah. Wow.
And now they've changed it, so we have our rightful place just ahead of swimming. But back in the day, and it used to mean that you'd always be at the bottom of the list and everything. And the day after the games finished in Sydney, there was the ticker tape parades, and they just forgot the sailing team. Like they didn't, they had cars waiting for us there, but they'd forgotten to organise the transport to get us there.
Wow.
We were all joking. We're still sort of yachting at the end of the list.
Still down there. Wow, geez.
But yeah, to be fair, that has certainly changed.
Yeah. Has to. There's no way it can't. And now it's just suffering your jocks wrestling, right? That'd be the lowest alphabetized sport, right? Just below weightlifting. I
guess it would be, yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing else out below wrestling. Oh, well. Sucks to be wrestling. Oh, well. Has to be one of them eventually there. Was there any temptation to go on to Athens or beyond, or was sort of Sydney always going to be it for you?
Look, there was there was some motivation to continue the journey of improving, and we campaigned with an attitude that was very much Victor's philosophy, and something that John Bertrand had said to me at the start of that second campaign, that we were training for Sydney, aspiring to be as good when we got to Sydney as the rest of the world would be in 2008, like be 2 Olympic cycles ahead of the rest of the world. And I don't feel like we ever sort of demonstrated our level of skill in the Olympic regatta. Like there was one windy race we won by quite a long way, but it was mostly in conditions that were the most difficult for us. And we grounded out and we got the result, but we never sort of really showed the world what we were capable of. And interestingly, like I'd been on this 10-year journey of sort of training towards that point, and I at that point I saw more room for improvement in our sailing than I had at any point prior to that, which sounds ridiculous because we'd come from being 87th in the world, and I really could. I could see more room for improvement when we were number 1 than I could when we were 87th.
Wow.
And I sort of, in some ways I wish I'd had the opportunity to continue pursuing that. But others, picked up that baton. So Nathan Wilmot and Matt Belcher and others carried that forward and took things to higher levels. But yeah, the reality was I really couldn't afford to financially. There was no money in winning the games. I couldn't have, I couldn't, support that on an ongoing basis. I was 27. I already had a job lined up. That was always the plan, that I'd sort of finish up there and go and start a proper career.
And you've done all right in that, I believe, over the 25 years since. So, hasn't been too bad after that.
Oh yeah, I can't complain. It took quite a long time to find a path that I was comfortable on and adjust to um, the real world, but that's not at all unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been lucky. I've had some good opportunities and ended up in a good place.
Will you be doing anything to celebrate the 25th anniversary? Be it go back to Sydney for any functions or sort of catch up with Mark or.
There's an Olympians Association event, reunion for the Sydney team next month, and absolutely I'll be going to that. And my involvement with the Olympic movement now is running the Olympians Association in Queensland.
Yep.
So I organise a big dinner we have in November, and
great.
We'll do our best to get together some of the cohort again then.
Fantastic.
Which is nice. It's been nice to sort of reconnect with some of those people already, and it's an indulgence these days to stop the clock and think back on it all.
That's what we're here to do, bring these memories back for you, Tom. Kind of
oh, it's nice. And
dig them out.
Most of us, Nat Crook still lives in it in the moment, but most of us, don't stop to think about it very often.
Go back into regular life. Which, I mean, on that though, being in Brisbane, and we're 7 years away, of course, from another home Olympics, and sailing's up in the north, is it not, of the state, if I'm not mistaken. Are you hoping that there's going to sort of be that attention and that excitement that you witnessed in Sydney that we're going to see at another home Olympics in our lifetime? Because this is a rarity, isn't it, that we're going to have two in our lifetime?
Oh, it's amazing. I can't wait. I think it'll be absolutely fantastic. Like there was in the 7 years leading into Sydney, there's a lot of skepticism about it, up here. But I think you've just got to look to the experience of most of the cities like Sydney who host the games, that it is ultimately an extraordinary thing for the city, for the investment in infrastructure, for what it does to people's sense of who we are and what we can do. And it'll be amazing. So it's a great relatively little city up here, but it's at a point where the games will, I think, do wonderful things for it.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, the lead up to Sydney and the excitement levels and everything that we had there, but I think the real crossing point will be at the LA closing ceremony, right? That handover ceremony when we officially know that we're next, that the flag has been given to the mayor of Brisbane, and that literally the next Olympics will be there. So I'm really hoping that will be a real turning point, and that hopefully by then too, maybe some of the venues have been started to be built that we need.
I suspect you've been way too optimistic.
We try to be on this show, Tom.
No, but I think the reality is that the media will be focused on it in a negative perspective
100%.
Until 24 hours before the opening ceremony.
Yep.
And, quite literally 24 hours before the opening ceremony, people will click over to, hey, this is happening and it's going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, there'll be an infinite number of things that they can, pick on.
Why we're here to help celebrate it and help, get that excitement levels building up, because we're very excited for it, and I can't obviously wait to see how Brisbane do it, and great to have them back in our backyard, Tom. We close out every interview with a set of 10 get-to-know-you style questions. These are fun style ones that I hope we can learn even more about you, Tom. And I'm going to start with the one thing that you never left home without when traveling to a competition.
Ooh. Generally, Mark.
Might help. Usually that's where I say, you can't say your boat or something like that. But Mark, no, you can say Mark. Mark's a good one. He usually helps in a two-man dinghy there. A traditional superstition that you followed before every big competition?
I didn't really have. I'd never call my parents That was one. So I never speak to them during the competition.
Okay.
So I rang them the day before the games in Sydney and said, I'll speak to you after the last race, 13 days later. And so that was one. And then I did have this strange superstition. It was actually born of reality that every time I won the second race of a regatta, we used to win it. And in the end, I managed to win a couple where we didn't do that. So the superstition got, thankfully broken so that it wouldn't matter if we didn't win the second race. But we did end up winning the second race in the Olympics. And
Yeah.
it was something of a really weird end to the race where we were racing offshore. It was very hard to see the marks, and we were third, I think, at the last mark with a one long leg to go to the finish. And the guys in front of us couldn't see the mark, couldn't find the mark, and we picked it up with a compass bearing really early on and managed to get an advantage and get in front. And I just remember coming down to this going, holy shit, we're going to win the second race at the Olympics. This is on track. And we crossed the finish line, and I looked over to Victor, our coach, who knew the sort of superstition. He just he just nodded.
Wow. Gold medal's yours at that point. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was
Love hearing that. What a great story. Yeah. A song that was on every one of your pre-competition playlists, no matter what.
Holy Grail.
Oh, yes. Hunters and Collectors. Great song. Yeah. There you go. That just, it reminds, I think, my generation that we know that song from the AFL coverage from Channel 10 in the 2000s, right? But my dad used to play that song a lot when I was a kid. So Good song. Like it. Obviously, direct messages weren't really a thing back in Sydney and Atlanta. Social media obviously wasn't a thing. So we usually ask, what is the most unexpected direct message you've ever gotten? But was there any fan mail, like the herograms or, any school kids' drawings or anything that you got, sort of unique ones back during your two Olympics at all?
Oh, you used to get some wonderful things. I can't really remember any of them. No, not really.
It's a dying art. I miss the herograms. I think the herograms are great. I sent a lot when I was a kid. So, and then even when they used to have the hero wall on the Australian Olympic team page, we had a field day back in Rio when you just read, random people going like, it'd be like, oh, hey, Tom, I met you in McDonald's in 1999. Do you remember me? Lol, go for the Olympics.
Yeah, you got to remember we were sailors back then and no one really paid any attention. I mean, the best story I can give you, the day before we competed, maybe a couple of days before we competed, our coach had this attitude like you've got to be in the right frame of mind. You just got to be doing things you enjoy. Don't go out and spend energy. Do things that make you feel good. I'd always wanted to buy myself a pair of expensive hiking boots. It was something I used to do a bit of stuff like that, and it was something that was completely unrelated to sailing. And so I went into the city 2 days before we competed, and I went into one of the outdoor shops and bought myself a pair of hiking boots. And I was in there, and Duncan Armstrong walked in. And he was absolutely one of my, childhood heroes. He must have seen I was wearing something from the games team, and he came over and he said, "Oh, how you going? And what are you in? And whatever." I think he was commentating on the radio during the games. And I got a buzz out of that. And as he was leaving, he turned around and goes, "Oh, well, don't worry how you go. If you're coming last, I'll put in a good word for you on the radio." and so that was my herogram direct message.
Wow.
From my hero, who had no idea that we were world champions and in with a good shot. And I did like catching up with him about a week after the games had finished.
Wow.
He remembered it clearly. And
good. I was going to ask, did he remember you afterwards? Like, oh shit! Oh, I thought, never mind. Welcome to the club. He's gold medal club. Fantastic. I love that. Great story. The weirdest thing you ever ate at an international competition, and did you like it?
Oh, weirdest thing I ever ate. We had some pretty good ones. So we did a regatta in Dubai back in the mid-90s when they were trying to put themselves on the map, and the local Sheik or whoever it was who was running sponsoring the event, put on a massive party at the end of it,
Okay.
and reportedly spent a couple of $1 million and flew a band in from South Africa or whatever. And they had a table there that was covered in like a barbecue table that would have been 5 meters long, covered in lobsters. And
Well,
I just remember thinking that was pretty special.
not
But
often you're getting
no,
lobster dinners.
we didn't need much special stuff. The
Wow.
good bowl of pasta was all we needed.
Well, this kind of maybe goes into the next question. Your ultimate guilty pleasure meal after a big competition. If the pasta's beforehand, was there a celebratory
Oh,
meal?
the one that sticks with me, I used to really love a Nutella crepe. We
Oh,
used to do
yes.
quite a lot of sailing on on the Mediterranean coast of France, sort of
Yep.
around Nice and those sort of areas.
Hmm.
And it was usually in the off season, sort of before the summer period, and it was usually pretty cold and windy. And there's something about a Nutella crepe after a day of sailing that was just spot on.
That sounds good. It's funny you say that. When I was in Paris, I would always walk past like late at night. You come back from the media center, and there'd always be one of these like fancy crepe. Get your Nutella. And I never got one, and now I'm just regretting it because
Yeah.
they are pretty amazing. The Nutella crepes. I like that answer. If you could swap sports for a day with another Olympian, what event would you choose, and how do you think you'd go?
Can I take their talent, or do I have to?
Absolutely, you can
Yeah.
do what you want. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I would love to have the experience of competing in the stadium, in one of the big Olympic stadiums.
Hmm.
Give me, Steve Hooker's skill set for a day. I was there in Beijing when he won that gold medal, and just the atmosphere there. Um, you know,
Take
yeah,
that. And the thing I love about the field events as well is that like they've got that opportunity to kind of get that hype, right? Like get the crowd involved and kind of behind you as you're going in for a run over the bar or jumping into the sand or anything along those lines too. So yeah, it'd be pretty special. There's
yeah.
that bravado going on there. I love this question, Tom, because we always have a bit of help with Chat GPT for this one. If your Olympic journey were a movie, what would the title be and who would play you?
Oh. um, I don't know. It'd have to be something like The Unknown Sailor
The
with
unknown sailor. I like that.
yeah, with Kevin Bacon or
Kevin
someone. I don't know.
Bacon, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that wins. He's one of my favorite actors. Yes, please. Any more on the Kevin Bacon page? I like that. The ChatGPT, again, they never give great answers, but I chose one here. They chose Golden Harbour because we like to do a mock poster, but I will change this up to the unknown sailor. I think that can work, but I'm going to hold this up for you. This is a mock poster that they've shown us here. There you are.
right.
Fist in the air, victory in Sydney. Lots of Australian flags there with a medal around your neck. Mark's apparently buggered off somewhere, so he's not there with you on the boat apparently. But
Yeah.
you look a bit like Carl Stefanovic. Can I just weirdly say that? I don't know what ChatGPT have done there, but you've gone the Carl Stefanovic route. There is an actor though. I don't know if you've ever sort of gotten a doppelganger before. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about when I say the actor Christopher Gorham. He's sort of one of these like random actors. He'll pop up in things, but I think you've got a bit of a resemblance to Christopher Gorham if you ever want to look him up. So
Right. Okay.
yeah, there's just he was in a show I used to watch called Popular back in the day, but he was in like Ugly Betty, and I think he was in one of those medical investigation shows that were popular in the 2000s. So look that up, Tom. Look that up. I
Yeah.
think there's a resemblance there. What is the one question you're tired of being asked, and what is the one you wish people would ask you instead?
Ooh. Uh, the one I'm asked is, so have you done the Sydney Hobart?
Hmm. They just think sailor. That's automatically what you guys do in Australia.
Yeah, the irony is I haven't, because
Mhm.
I get horrendously seasick.
Wow.
Amuses people for me. Uh, yeah.
Is there one though that you wish people would ask you instead? Like, would you like to not do the Sydney to Hobart?
yeah. No, I don't feel like I want for. I can't think of one.
Nothing
Yeah.
urgent. That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a Hobart guy, Tom. So I used to always watch the end of the Sydney to Hobart when I was growing up. And the couple of years I lived in Sydney, I was like, I'm going to go watch the start because I've always seen the finish. I've never seen the start. And the one day I could have done it, I slept in and I was lazy. I'm like, I've got the Christmas hangover, so didn't see it. But I used to love watching the finish of the Sydney to Hobart. It was always a big deal growing up. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
buzzing the helicopters and everything.
Look, I think the question that I'd love to be asked more often um, is sort of what am I most proud of? Because, yeah, it sort of goes to this thing. Look, so I run the Olympians Association, and one of the big challenges we have is that most of the stuff to do with the Olympic movement deifies swimming medalists, and it really cuts a divide in the Olympic community between this group who are always put forward as the sort of, this is what, being a successful Olympian looks like. It's multiple medals and relays and, thousands of medals hanging around your neck. And it's just, that's the image. And for most Olympians, that's not attainable. And in fact, if you've been to a games, you know what it's like, that most Olympians go to a games and are profoundly disappointed with the outcome and deeply upset and embarrassed and, spent their life wishing for an ending that they didn't get. And that's most people's experience of being an Olympian. It's a profoundly disappointing experience at the end. It's an amazing thing to be part of it. It's an amazing sort of reward to be labelled an Olympian and to be a part of all of that. But you've spent years working towards something that you failed at the last hurdle. And yeah, with the Olympians Association, the big challenge is to sort of shift the conversation towards, well, actually, what makes you an Olympian and what makes Olympians special actually isn't what happens at the end. It's the journey of getting there. It's the hardships. It's the it's the hardships, not the victories. It's the foes, not the friends. It's the whole thing. And people have these amazing journeys and experiences and things that have got them there. And most people have, elements of what they've achieved that they're incredibly sort of proud of, even if the end of the story isn't what they want it to be, and it's the only thing that people ever point to. I think that's the question you should be asking people.
Well, I'll steal that in a moment. I will ask you that, but I just want to say that I agree completely with everything that you're saying. We love. My biggest joy in this show is, it's great to get the big names on the show and talk about the medals, sure, but like I generally get more out of hearing the stories and the journeys because, I'm not an Olympian, but I live through the stories of Olympians. So, to me, it's kind of, making that Olympics in general. But I'm going to ask you then, Tom, what are you most proud of your career?
Look, I'm very proud of the fact we took the sport forward and the legacy that we left and what's come from that in our sport. And I'm really proud of the way that we did it. Like we earned it. We did the hard work. It was, it was the result of having trained harder than everyone else, and that's sort of as it should be. We weren't ridiculously talented. We didn't have to be lucky on the day. We just, we did it the right way. But we did it, I think, in a way where we were admired and respected and friends with all our competitors. Like we were, and managed to maintain that. And that's something that, I hold in great sort of regard, that we got to the end and people were happy to see us win, like our competitors were.
Good answer. And I think maybe we might have to borrow that one from you and use that in these 10. Maybe we need to scrap one of these ones and replace it. Who knows? The last one I'll ask you though, Tom, it is a deep one. This is also a meaningful one as well. The one lesson you've learnt from losing that shaped you more than winning.
Ooh. I think the reason I'm struggling to answer it is I think that there's not one lesson from losing. Like I think there's that all the lessons come from losing, or most most of them do. Um, and yeah, I mean, I spent 9.5 years losing to get to the point of winning at you know at the 10th year. And it was the experience of having just done that so many times and what you learn through doing that that gave us a lot of strength um, at the end. Uh, yeah. Look, if I can reframe your question a little bit, I think the thing I learned from winning at the end that I didn't have when I wasn't winning was um, to trust myself, and that's not every athlete's problem. Some have the other problem that they're overconfident and trust themselves when they shouldn't. But for me, um, yeah, that was the thing that in the end Victor was able to solve, was to get me to a position where I could have an enormous level of self-confidence and be able to trust myself. And when we crossed that threshold, we went from being, good competitors in the top 5 in the world to dominating very quickly.
Great answer. I like that. That's a different perspective.
What we learned, it was probably more what we learned from winning than what we learned from losing right at the end.
Yeah, no, good answer. I like the way that's sort of phrased, and that comes around that way. So always ends a nice little bow on these chats by sort of bringing it around, and you've changed it up. So I like it. I like that, Tom. And it's been an absolute pleasure to learn and hear and everything about your incredible career, those memories of Atlanta and Sydney, of course, and everything else going on there. And do you have social media anywhere if people want to sort of follow you, keep up to date with anything that you're going on in life at the moment, or anything you want to plug or tag for anybody who wants to stay up to date with you?
No. Give your attention to the next generation of athletes.
Good answer.
Are out there now.
There you go. I like that. Have we got any 470 sailors out there we need to keep an eye on into LA and beyond that we should be keeping close attention to?
They're not. Yeah, I hope we do. The class is rebuilding. Someone should be going down to the Gold Coast and knocking on Matt Belcher's door and trying to get him back in a boat, because I'm sure that he could turn it around again and win us another medal in short order.
Go on, Matt. You're listening. You might find this. Wake up. I mean, Gold Coast sounds like a nice place to be, but, who wouldn't want another Olympic medal? If you got a few, go get them more, Never say no to that. Who knows? Tom, mate, it has been an absolute honour. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your stories, and a real privilege to speak with you on the show today.
Pleasure, Ben. Thank you.